This episode is dedicated to our friend Luis Pereira. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I forgot it during the episode, but I just wanted to give you a shout out. This episode is for you, buddy. Thank you. Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the lead singer for Lipstick.
And I'm Steve. I'm the bassist.
And welcome to the Lipstick panel. Today on the Lipstick panel, we are going to be taking a viewer request. He's a listener of Pot of Thunder, discovered the show through that. And so I really wanted to make sure we got around to doing this. We're doing Black Sabbath's debut album. And speaking of Pot of Thunder, our guest today, Chris L. from Pot of Thunder, coming here to talk about guitar rock without the Jones Brothers making snarky jokes. We'll be the ones making snarky jokes today.
Take that, nerds!
Yep, there's always somebody making snarky jokes in my presence, so I've just come to accept that as my reality.
There's always someone making snarky jokes in my presence, too, but it's usually me, so I can hardly complain.
Right.
I complain anyway, but I shouldn't.
Well, so this is an interesting invitation, which I appreciate. Kind of setting the stage for the next chapter of our podcast, because we're running out of Kiss songs.
Are you doing Black Sabbath afterwards?
Well,
spoilers? Did we just spoil the internet?
Well, I wanted to
Thanos kills everybody.
I wanted to offer up a resolution to a spoiler, because that's how I'm going to promote this appearance, so hopefully we'll get some people flooding in to find out what's going on. But
oh, jeez.
Yeah, so we're just considering how we're going to move forward, and obviously with the Kiss songs running out, we're going to have to do something else. So who knows? This could be a precursor of what's coming down the pike. I will say that it's a very slim possibility that we'll commit to another band's complete catalog. So I'll just throw that out there as being an extremely slim possibility. But I think that in general the plan is to keep it going somehow. So the people who enjoy the podcast, that's good news for them. But enough of my self-promotion on your show. Let's...
Oh, no, plug away, please.
How dare you go on other people's shows and promote your own thing? That is totally unprecedented in all entertainment.
Also,
I figured I'd be the first to ever do that. So.
You, sir, are a groundbreaker.
Exactly.
I mean, this entire show is literally just a commercial for our band. The idea is, hopefully you like us enough to check out our music, and maybe, if you like it a lot, not illegally download it.
That 5 seconds of music you heard before the talking started, sorry. But that music's us, you should listen to that.
Well, I will say this, as a fan of Pot of Thunder, who, enjoys the show very much, I'm happy to hear that you guys are going to keep it going. I would say in my ideal world, the ultimate conclusion to the Kiss catalog is you guys just doing Speedball Jam, that hour and 40-minute Vinnie Vincent guitar solo, and just going through that. I
didn't even know such an animal existed. That scares me to even contemplate it.
It's a CD I own. It's one track, and it's just a really long guitar solo, and just all Vinnie Vincent-isms. It's pretty spectacular. It's great troll music. Like you're with someone who, generally thinks you have good taste in music. You pop that in the CD player and you see how long it takes before they get furious at you. It's a beautiful
Love that
thing.
idea. It's the kind of thing you leave behind in a rental car.
Yes.
Just really piss off whoever is unfortunate enough to get the car after you.
So talking about the subject at hand, the first Black Sabbath album, I guess we should go around the panel and talk about our history with it. Let's start with our esteemed guest, Mr. Lathrop. What's your history with the debut Black Sabbath record?
Well, I was introduced to the band mainly through FM radio, and so they played mainly the big tunes off of Paranoid. We all know what those are.
Right.
So that kind of got me interested. So I went and picked up We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll, kind of their version of double platinum to make
Greatest
a
hits
Kiss
record.
Yep. And just really got intrigued by the stuff that I ended up discovering was on the first album. And so I went back on a discovery mission and was very glad I did. It's an incredible album, as we will discuss.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. Black Sabbath, I feel if you're a hard rock guy, it's part of your DNA. You really can't avoid it. If you're into old school 70s and 80s rock like I am, you're going to like Black Sabbath. That's just par for the course. This was an album I never really owned. I always had friends who had copies of it, either the record or the CD, and so I always heard it, and it was always around, so I never went out of my way to buy it. And so there were a couple tunes I wasn't really familiar with, but it was very fun listening to for the first time. I'm one of those guys who has a good general familiarity with the catalog. I love all the Dio era albums. I like some of the Tony Martin stuff. I like Born Again. So very, very casual Sabbath fan. Like, don't memorize the track list of every song on every album, but kind of know the history and know a couple cuts off each. Yeah, I own We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll. Also, that was my first Sabbath CD, so it was fun digging into it, and it was pretty much what I expected. Even the tracks I hadn't heard, there wasn't really any surprises, but I think that's just because I know the band so well. But it was definitely very fun to listen to. How about you, Steve?
I hadn't listened to this album all the way through. I, of course, knew the big singles from it, the ones that everybody knows as the iconic ones that helped launch this sort of style of heavy metal. The only Sabbath album I'd ever listened to all the way through was Paranoid, which had so many classics. So, of course, as any good rock-loving kid growing up in the Midwest, I thought Sabbath and Ozzy were both pretty great. I wasn't super familiar with the Dio or later eras of their catalog. I knew they existed, but I'd never listened to them. So mostly I just knew Paranoid and a couple of songs off of this one.
I will say this. One of the most fun things about growing up in the generation I did, where I was going back and discovering the back catalogs of these bands, is I discovered Black Sabbath with Ozzy first and Ozzy solo after that. My dad's a huge Ozzy guy. And then I discovered Dio just through watching VH1 Classic, and I didn't know anything about Dio, but I saw the video for Holy Diver. I'm like, this is one of the most awesome things I've ever seen in my entire life.
He's just walking around with a sword for no reason.
It was great. And so I, bought some Dio records and started listening to Dio. Like, man, this guy is really cool. And then I, found out that Dio was in Black Sabbath. Like, what? Dio was in Sabbath? This has to be the most amazing record ever. And then I listened to Heaven Hell, and it was amazing. But it was mind-blowing to think, what? Dio was in Sabbath? My mind just couldn't handle the awesomeness of that concept.
And then you heard that Five Finger Death Punch cover, and we're like, music is complete now.
No.
Five Finger Death Punch played Holy Diver.
No.
Oh, they covered that song?
Yeah, I think it was them. It was one of those really butt-rocky heavy metal bands.
Oh, those guys are the worst, aren't they? I mean, I know they covered Bad Company. The self-titled anthem by the band of the same name.
What if Bad Company was all about the American soldier?
Exactly right. Just pandering horse shit and just, completely just no connection to the vibe or the spirit of the original. Just terrible. Those guys are the worst. I mean, now I'm grumpy. It just... Having had that band mentioned in this episode has got my dander up, so...
I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't talk smack about the troops in that I'm, going in for one of my citizenship interviews literally tomorrow.
Oh, I'm not... Yeah, I mean, the troops are fine. Five Finger Death Punch are not fine. They're terrible. And if they covered Holy Diver, that's just another desecration of a classic by those...
They did a passable version of it. It was just completely standard.
I refuse to accept that. Even passable coming from them is just not possible. So
You know,
I gotta think you're lying to me at this point.
passable in that way that, you know, so many bands will just cover a song and add nothing to it. There's like, oh, this is, you know, them recording it exactly like it was before, but with modern amplifiers. Cool.
You know, my thing with Five Finger Death Punch is I don't like their music, but they seem like nice enough guys. Where it's the kind of thing where it's like, I will not buy a record. I will really get annoyed when they cover classic songs poorly. But, you know, Jason Hook, I think is the guy's name. Like, it used to play guitar for Alice Cooper. Just super nice dude. I know a lot of my friends are hired guns. And I know they have their passion projects of original music they really want to do. They just get the hired gun thing. And so to see someone achieve their musical dream, even if I think their musical dream is shitty, you know, it's hard for me to completely rag on it.
Chase your awful, awful dream.
Yes, chase your awful, awful dream. I do that. I do that every day with my band.
Yeah, I mean, I can separate the two. I mean, I've seen that movie, Hired Guns. I didn't even realize who he was or if he was in that band or whatever. I can separate the two, but, you know, this fucking music that's just created for roid heads in the gym and stuff, and, you know, frat guys who rape people and drink to excess. It's just, I can't abide it. It's just horrible stuff. And that cover of Bad Company is just a disgrace. I mean, if we're here talking about great 70s rock, and a lot of people are mixed on Bad Company, think it's a little too cheesy and stuff, and it was, but you know, it was a good formula for them. But that first album of theirs is a classic, and their signature tune, Commandeered by Those Clowns, I can't abide it. So we better get off this topic.
Now that we're all in a bad mood,
Now
let's talk about Black Sabbath.
Yeah, let's get all moody.
Actually, that works. That's actually a good thing, because it happens to be a bright, sunshiny day here in the Chicago suburbs. Not exactly the weather conducive to discussing the Black Sabbath debut.
Not the mountains of Norway where the weather is cold.
Yeah, so I'm in the darkest room of my
there.
house right now, trying to get in the proper mindset. And now that I'm a little pissed off, I think it's time to get rolling.
Yeah, let's do it. So this is for the sake of ranking this album, we decided to do sort of a combo of the US release and the British release, because different songs. Man, when I first found this out, it definitely annoyed me, because I thought they got this shit, you know, together in the mid-'60s when they started just releasing the Beatles albums the same in both North America and England. And so it is annoying that different track listing thing was continuing this late into the game, but we've got all the songs you care about in this ranking.
All the songs you care about, and several you may not.
Right. So coming in as the least best song on Black Sabbath's debut, I like this one a lot. Evil Woman. And, you know, I will toss this out there to just enrage Chris even more. I also like the ELO song, Evil Woman. I enjoy ELO. Just trying to build that rage as much as possible.
Yeah.
That was taking me a second. I was like, wait, no, the ELO song, I like the ELO song's good.
Yeah, I'm not really enjoying where this conversation's headed, so I'm just going to abstain from commenting on that. That would be a whole other series of episodes if you want to go down that road, but big sore spot for me. But you want me to go first on?
Yeah, you're the one who hated it the most, so.
Yeah, I didn't even make the ELO connection, but now I hate it even more. Actually, let me just say that the thing about all these songs on this album is it was hard for me to rank them, just because they're all so close. They're all, I mean, I really don't have an issue or hate any song in this album. the thing about this song is it was never on any of the original pressings that I ever owned, either vinyl or like when they first put it out on CD. So I'd never really heard it before, and when I ended up hearing it years later, it just it wasn't part of the original listening experience for me, so it just didn't seem to fit in. And then just sonically, it's like kind of it's more of an upbeat. It almost sounds like an attempt to get like an AM radio single or something. And it just for those reasons, I had to put something last, and that was a good enough candidate. It's not a song I get excited about, but it's interesting. But I don't think it blends in with the vibe of the rest of the album.
It definitely doesn't blend in. I liked it the most of the panel because I'm an old school party rock guy. I like Kiss quite a bit, and this was just this is a fun party rock song. This kind of it has that AM radio kind of vibe. I could see Bad Company doing a kick-ass version of this song. Like, this doesn't sound like Sabbath per se. It just sounds like a cool blues rock song. And because I like those kind of songs, I'm like, yeah, I'm enjoying this cut. For me, there's definitely two tiers on this album. There are, in my opinion, 3 like A+ classics, and then everything else is more on the same level. This one doesn't fall into the A+ classic for me, but it's a cool 70s rock song, and that's kind of my meat and potatoes. That's my home base, so I'm gonna gravitate towards it and love it. Steve, you hate the blues, and you hate women, I assume.
I mean, I hate evil women. No, I mean, I just don't particularly care for the blues, especially when it's really formulaic 12-bar blues. This song, it was sort of a generic blues song. I wasn't super into it. I gave it a point for the saxophone line they had going through there. I thought that was a pretty cool sonic effect. Otherwise, I think this song fairly well represents the ways in which this album is a little bit underdeveloped. Like, they had found that iconic Sabbath song, as evidenced by like the 3 classic A+ songs, but they hadn't really locked into that as their whole thing, and they were still trying to straddle the line between being a fairly conventional blues rock band and being this intense new metal thing that they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, guitar tone wise, this is sounds like any other 60s rock band that came out around the same time. Like, that guitarist tone, fits very well with something like Spirit in the Sky. The difference is they had a couple really creepy songs that those bands weren't really delving into those kind of lyrics and those kind of chordal patterns, but a lot of it would, fit in well right alongside your Jefferson Airplanes and Doors of the day. Like, just fit into that scene perfectly, a lot of these songs.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I mean, I dug this one. This was the big unexpected surprise of the album for me, where I'm like, all right, I didn't really know this song, but this is one I'd add to the playlist. Cool tune. So next up on the list, we've got Sleeping Village. I think this one good for atmosphere, but kind of forgettable musically in comparison to some of the other tracks, where it's not bad, and it helps further the lyrical ideas of Sabbath and building that creepy atmosphere around them. But musically, it doesn't impress nearly as much as the other tracks. A lot of this album feels like a live set in both a good way and a bad way, where they just kind of jam out on a bunch of songs, and it's like, oh, the band's jamming. It's the kind of thing that's cool to see live and cool on a live album, but comes across a little bit awkward on a studio album.
You get the impression that they were told they had to fill like a 45-minute set, and they were like, oh shoot, we don't have that many songs.
Right? And one of the things I said with Steve before this podcast a couple days ago, I think, when you compare, let's say, the first Kiss album versus the first Black Sabbath album, Black Sabbath, I think, did more things sonically that influenced a generation in terms of like the changes that they made musically were more significant than Kiss, like the steps forward they were taking. But I think Kiss, their first album, had more polished songwriting, more complete songs, and a better focus on like, this is the direction we want to head in. Like Sabbath seems like a bunch of dudes in their early 20s who are like, we've been partying a lot, and I guess we sort of stumbled into this musical style, versus Kiss felt more deliberate and focused. And there's not necessarily, a right or wrong way to do that, because you have such classic material on this album, but I think some of the songwriting could have been a little bit more focused for my taste, but I'm also a pop guy, so take that as you may. What do you think, Chris?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about some of these, the way you guys arrange the songs is that there are medleys, and so Sleeping Village is kind of pulled out of a medley. So I think standing on its own, I agree with you. I had it second to last on my list as well. I think the best part of it is the beginning with the vocal and that kind of Jews harp going on in the background.
Yeah, that part's pretty awesome.
And the acoustic guitar. Once the vocals drop out and it becomes kind of an instrumental along the lines of Rat Salad that's on Paranoid, it's not very interesting, really. I like it better in context when it flows into Warning, as it's originally presented. But as a standalone track, it's not really anything to get excited about. But talking about what you were mentioning earlier, I'm pretty sure that was exactly what went on. They just went in and did their live set a couple times, recorded the album over, I think, 2 days, and then mixed it and produced it and put it out. So that's pretty much exactly what they did. So what you hear is them just doing a live set in the studio.
And, there's a certain level of charm to that. And, hey, when you did your live set, you accidentally stumbled upon to a new genre of music. So it worked out okay for them.
Right.
Yeah, you could say that.
Right.
Yeah, they did all right for themselves.
Those kids.
Those rapscallions.
So speaking of Warning, that's actually next on the list. So I feel like, Chris, you're probably a little bit surprised at how low Warning ranked, but actually Steve and I both put this as our last place song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but I actually had it second. And it just comes back to the first time I heard it, when I put on We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll on the turntable. I'm sure I was at college. And I just seem to remember it being a super dark, gloomy day, a perfect day for this sort of thing. Just this song grabbed me from the first time I heard it. It's a blues, which I'm with Steve. I'm kind of not super enthused about the 12-bar blues and what's been done to it over the years, predominantly by white people. But this harkens back to like the very early days of the blues that all the British guys got infatuated with, where some of those songs were like kind of like this music, borderline creepy and scary, and talking about, we all know what's happened with the whole song Crossroads, and how that, the message of the song's been watered down over the years. But, when it first came out, it was about basically almost like about the occult, talking about dealing with the devil and stuff. And this song is kind of in that vein. a blues tune, but heavy and dark and just really foreboding sounding. And this one grabbed me the very first time I heard it. And so the reason why I have it ranked so high is just because I'll never forget the first time I heard it and just being like, oh my God, this is incredible. In terms of the guitar solo in the middle, again, doing their live set and kind of an inexperienced band coming in and had to fill out the time and stuff. It's interesting, but I could have done without it, really. But the rest of it is just fucking awesome, and I will never forget how blown away I was by it the first time I heard it. So that's why it gets such a high ranking from me.
I think my thing with this song is I think I have biases from other bands diluting my opinion of it a bit, where I still think it's great and I enjoy listening to it, but I've gotten so sick of so many bands just jamming out forever and just not having tight song structure. And a lot of the ideas feel random, like part of the live set, but it's still like the track itself does all those things well, in my opinion. There's not a bad track on this album, that we're ranking. I enjoy all these songs, and this is still, a great potent rocker. And as far as the blues goes, I think I can safely say I like the blues more than the other panelists here, but I will definitely agree with Chris's statement that, I think a big problem with the blues is that, the white folks water it down and do it poorly. But if you do the blues properly, it can be a really awesome genre of music. It's just so many people do it badly. And, I will also go on record saying this for the first time in the podcast. In general, white people should not touch funk, because white people funk, aka the Red Hot Chili Peppers, is some of the worst music I've ever heard in my entire life. It infuriates me. Extreme, stop that shit. You sounded awful when you did it. White folks, if you're going to do funk, do real funk. Don't do this white people, oh, look, Sublime and all that other
Sublime, with or without Rome, you're on notice.
That's right. So
Are they really even considered funk? Sublime?
By some terrible white people, yes, they are. And it's like, no, this isn't funk. Listen to Parliament and then come back to me. Freaking hipsters.
Yeah, I mean, I won't take severe a stance on funk as you, but in terms of blues stuff, it just, again, it's like all the danger has been sucked out of it, and it's now it's like this whimsical piece of Americana. Right. And it's like, if you look back on the guys who were originally playing this music, they were fucking criminals. They were killing people. They were just real lowlifes, and they were talented, but they sang about creepy, weird subject matter if you delve really deeply into it.
Yeah, it's all like murder and stuff and violence, crime,
and that's
theft.
The world they lived in, and so it's genuine. But then, really, it's mainly what happened in the wake of Stevie Ray Vaughan that just destroyed the genre for me.
Man, when
I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. The guy was legit. He was genuine. Real top flight artist, but the imitators that came after him and just the people who swooped in to the blues genre as players and also fans because of Stevie Ray Vaughan just destroyed the genre for me.
Yeah, I will agree with that. Nothing says hardened blues, hardship, like a dude living in a $500,000 house in the burbs with a white polo shirt and a clean guitar tone. Nothing says the blues like that guy.
Yeah. So, what do you think of Warning, Steve?
I put this one at the bottom of my list, like Greg did, and I didn't catch on to the blues influence as much. I didn't really notice that, but what this felt to me is this was one of the major missteps of early metal. Like there's a lot of things that, listening to this album, having listened to a ton of modern metal and like modern extreme and jazz and experimental metal, you can hear a lot of really important influences there. like lots of unusual chord structures and these huge, overwhelming distortions and swings and dynamics. Like, there's a lot of, I think what this album does really well at its best is music that makes you uncomfortable. It does things that really music shouldn't be doing if you want music to be a fun and positive experience. Instead, it's music that's fundamentally about not a good time. Warning also inspired metal in a lot of ways, where it's like guitar heavy jam song that goes on for a very long time. But this song sounds like the Grateful Dead. It's not making you uncomfortable with how long it is. It's just a long and kind of tedious jam song that, you know, you'd hear it at a festival on a nice bright sunny day and you'd take a nap.
I wouldn't go that far. I think it's a cool jam, and once again, I'm thinking in the context of if I was at a show and this was, you know, a local band and they were, you know, bustling with energy and not going over their set time like a bunch of savages.
How late were you out last night?
I was at this festival show last night, and the band I wanted to see was supposed to go on before midnight, and they didn't go on until 2 a.m. because of stupid idiots going past their set time.
It takes a long time to set up an iPod, Greg.
Yeah, it takes a long time to set up your tracks and to lip sync to them.
God. That's what's happening nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
I have so much rage for that. Like, Lipstick, we can, you know, set up our show. Like, if we're really hustling, we can do it in 10 minutes. Plug in the guitars, plug in the mics, and go. But, you know, these people with their MacBooks taking 45 minutes to set up just infuriates me. And so...
Oh, it should.
It does.
Terrible.
It's like, oh, I hit the space bar on my MacBook. I guess I'm a musician. No, shut up. This is real music. And so, in a world where, you know, I have to deal with that bullshit, freaking... You know, Warning is a magnum opus of brilliant proportions. If I saw a band do this live, I would be excited because they're not playing the space bar on their laptop. It's a cool tune. It's a cool jam. Sorry, this is where I would need that Vinnie Vincent rage music that you guys have on Pot of Thunder.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, that's no good.
All right, let's. Any other thoughts on Warning before we move on to the next one?
Yep.
Remember how I was supposed to be like the face of this podcast? Like you were supposed to be the heel, I was supposed to be the face.
Right.
And then just my honest opinions came out. Greg's the nice one. He likes pop music.
His heart is full of rage. I'm so scared.
All right, next up on the list, we have Wicked World, a.k.a. The other bonus track from this album. So... This one I almost didn't even rank because I was going off the European release. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it canonical like I do with my Beatles albums. I don't acknowledge the American versions. I go with the British release. I'm like, you know what? Whatever, one more song. People have loved this song for decades. All right, I'll rank it. This one is kind of like quirky and weird. It's very bouncy and happy, given the subject matter of the song. And kind of jazzy, but it's very cool. It sort of reminds me, there's that Beatles song, Run for Your Life, where it's a very happy, bouncy song, but the dark lyrics don't mesh with how bouncy and happy the music is. That's kind of what Wicked World is for me, where like, this song is way too bouncy and happy for how dark it is.
For a song that's like probably about a prostitute having an abortion.
Right. But... You know, I've actually written songs like that on purpose because I like that weird disconnect where it's super happy music with super dark lyrics. But I feel that wasn't them doing it on purpose. And I think it shows that, you know, heavy metal was largely an accident. It wasn't like we're going to just make the darkest, scariest stuff ever. It's just they happened to write a couple songs and that direction took off. But this was showing that they didn't realize that the dark music and dark lyrics were, you know, the winning formula. They were sort of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. But it's a cool track, and I like it a lot.
Although, to be fair, all the lyrics on this album are pretty dark. I feel like the closest they have to a song that, like, isn't lyrically pretty metal is Evil Woman.
which is still like, this woman sucks. Like, it's still not positive.
No, it's not positive, but it's like most of the rest of their stuff is like trying to be scary dark. Where like things are terrible because the devil, whereas Evil Woman is just like, this woman sucks. She's ruining my life.
Gotta Eat When You Can would not have fit in well on the record.
No, it would not. I don't really have anything else.
Whoever wants to go.
I don't really have much to say about Wicked World. It's an all right song. It's one of those ones that I could see why it would be left off of various editions. I don't object to its inclusion here, but it's not the most amazing.
Yeah, this is one that I don't think was on any original copy of the album I ever had. Yeah, I'm actually old enough to be have been purchasing music right when the CD started coming out, which is the early to mid '80s. So you get a lot of again, it was you weren't sure which version of the release you were going to get. You were just happy that it was out on the format, and so I think the original Warner Brothers release of this on CD just had 5 tracks on there. I mean, now we know that some of them are medleys, but Wicked World and Evil Woman, I don't remember being on the original CD pressing of this album. This is one that when I started listening back to this album a couple days ago to get ready for the show, was toward the bottom of the list, and it just kept creeping up, mainly because the way they switch gears and sort of slow down under the verses, I just find that really cool. And that's something, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Classic Albums episode about Paranoid. It's on like Access TV these days, or it was released on like home video or whatnot, that whole Classic Album series.
Yeah, I've seen a couple.
But
I haven't seen that one.
It's a good one. I recommend it if you come across it, either in like a used DVD or if you see it come up on Access TV, if you guys get that on your streaming or cable. But Henry Rollins is one of the guys they interview throughout that, and they're talking about Paranoid, the album, but one of the things he points to is how they switch gears on a dime, and like have a fast section, then they just click into a slower section, or vice versa, and just really speaking highly of their ability to do that. And one of the funny or not so much humorous, but just really cool thing he said, he's talking about that, and he goes something along the lines of, get into the band room and see how easy it is to pull that off and make it sound cool. Pretty much just talking about what it's like to be cooped up in a shitty 8x10 or whatever rehearsal room, pounding out originals, and how difficult it is to pull off what Black Sabbath seemingly can do effortlessly. And I think that's an example of it here. Just when, like you said, the kind of bouncy, upbeat intro is doesn't really do it for me, but when they take it down and slow it up when the vocals kick in is really cool, and that caused it to creep up on my list to number 5 out of 8.
I will say this. Sabbath is a band that does a lot of things I generally don't like in music, but they do those things well, and I give them a pass. So there are a lot of bands that try to be like Sabbath. They're like, we're going to go fast and then slow, and those usually, local bands do a really terrible job at it, and it's like, oh, this is bad. Stop it. Just write a pop song instead. You can't do this. You aren't good enough. Either practice more and tighten up your songwriting, or just write something simpler, because this isn't working. Sabbath is the band that pulls it off. Sorry, I'm really enraged about that show last night. There was so much bullshit.
Well, I can't believe that it's become commonplace in a rock festival setting to be busting out the MacBooks and be playing tracks. That's
I mean,
pretty shocking to
it
me.
wasn't necessarily a rock festival. It was an all weekend general music family festival kind of thing.
Okay.
But it was organized by mostly rock guys.
Yeah, so there was a lot of rock bands, but the problem is the bands were doing different things wrong. The one band was doing tracks, which was lame, and the one band was doing the long jams that sucked, which was it's like, they're doing different things that suck, but they're sucking equally for different reasons. Man,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
so not positive today. I'm the one who usually says nice things about every band that I see.
I love all my sucky children equally.
Uh,
Well, the thing, like you were saying, is it's easier to deal with the suckage if they're at least professional about it. But to dick around with your setup, or even worse, is the band that when they're done with their set, they stand around soaking up the accolades like rock stars. It's like, listen, motherfucker, pack up your drum set, close down your rig, get the fuck off the stage,
and let them talk to you at the merch table. Sell your
or,
stuff.
or whatever. Make room for the next band. The second you get done with your last note, start unplugging shit, move it off the stage. That's the worst offender, in my opinion, is the guys who hang around, dilly-dallying around with their tear down when their band's following them. That's just total bullshit.
Yep.
Yep.
So there's my rant on the subject.
We all hate all other musicians.
Right. Any other comments on Wicked World before we move on? Steve, do you have anything?
No, just that it's pretty middling.
All right, we're in the top 4, and this next song, I think, should have been top 3, but wasn't voted that way. We've got N.I.B. coming up next. This is a classic.
Yeah,
All-time classic of the genre. Classic for the band. Just amazing song. Lyrically, shout out to Geezer Butler for writing all these creepy, weird lyrics. It's very interesting as someone who sort of listened to Sabbath and Ozzy solo simultaneously, and what a different lyrical perspective Geezer Butler comes from than Ozzy does.
right.
When you compare something like Crazy Train to this, they're such different animals. But, the speed up and slow downs that this song does, they do very well. Just everyone's doing great in this track. Just great bass playing, great drumming, great guitar playing, just classic riff. It's an all-time classic song. I love it.
I'm going to disagree a little bit on the lyrics of this one. This is one that, I don't really know the timelines of when songs came out very well, but I tend to, I compare so many songs in this vein to Sympathy for the Devil, where, the big thing that Sympathy for the Devil does is its lyrics are still a little bit subtle. They never just come out and be like, my name's Satan, let's hang out and be friends. Whereas this one does that.
Wait, I mean, he does say, "You can call me Lucifer" in Sympathy for the Devil.
When does that happen?
Like, in the lyrics. Look it up. Look it up, Steve.
What?
Look it
Yeah,
up.
it's in there.
Look it up.
What? I never noticed that song, that lyric.
Yeah.
Well, that's a testament to how subtle it was.
Yeah,
apparently.
right? Exactly.
I thought it was pretty prominent. Like, in the mix, he enunciated very well. Just, Control F Lucifer in that lyric sheet.
Yeah, I'm actually with Steve on this one. It's like this one ended up as 6 on my list, and again, just because it's 6 doesn't mean I hate it. It's like when people ask me about my favorite or how I would rank Zeppelin albums, and I have Houses of the Holy and the 4th album toward the bottom, people are like, I can't believe you hate those albums. I'm like, I don't hate them, but something has to be toward the bottom, and those are the ones for me. This one actually was the one where Wicked World started creeping up, and it actually jumped over N.I.B. I've got N.I.B. as 6th out of the 8 songs. I don't know. I'm kind of with Steve. It's like when you just when you bust out the Lucifer
Multiple
reference,
times.
it seems like you're trying too hard a little bit, which is probably not true. But I don't know. It's just over the years, this one is just kind of, I don't know. It's a kick-ass song, no doubt. It's a staple of a live set, but I don't know. Compared to the other tunes on this album, I had to bump it down to 6. You know,
I mean, I had this one
it's
third
just
from
not
the
that
top.
interesting to me. What's that?
I had it third from the top. It's just that, you know, the
That's
lyrics.
still pretty high.
Yeah, right. It's one of the best songs on this album. It's just if I'm forced to nitpick, the lyrics are a little bit on the nose and lacking in subtlety, and like I don't know the interplay between the vocals and the instruments on the verses is a little uninteresting. Like the bridge and the chorus, those are pretty great. Just the verses are a little meh. They feel like filler.
The bridge and the chorus, I think, are definitely the best part of the song. But I don't know. I think it's cool. Like, song about the devil. He's just an awkward guy, you know, trying to woo this girl. It's cute. It's a cute love song by Black Sabbath.
Yeah,
I like
that's
it.
one way to go about it.
Just awkward nice guy Satan.
Yeah, just like, you know, he probably has black rimmed glasses and a laptop.
He just really
Just doesn't understand how bad he is for pressing the space bar and taking 45 minutes to set up his MacBook.
He just really loves the thought of being with you, or maybe he loves the thought of not being so alone. Peach scones.
Yeah, now this.
Now, what's you guys' take on the title of this song? There are several theories about what it means. I don't think anybody's actually confirmed it.
Oh, it's not confirmed as Nativity in Black?
See,
I mean, that's the common thing, but other people are like, I think even Geezer Butler himself has said that it was just a descriptor for Bill Ward's beard. I mean, somebody has come out and said that at some point to maybe cast some doubt on what N.I.B. means, really.
if
but
I
yeah,
have
I
to
just wanted
pick,
to.
I think it's more than likely the stupid one. Like, if I had to
Probably.
guess,
Yeah, probably.
it's the
They
dumb.
probably didn't put
dumb
that
in
much
joke.
thought into it to call it Nativity in Black, but
Because if
yeah,
you came
I
up with
just
something
wanted to
that clever,
get your
you'd probably
take.
just call it Nativity in Black. Like, if it was
right, exactly. That's what I was just about to say. Why not spell it out? You know?
no, it's definitely just the dumb joke about the mustache.
Yeah, that's
probably.
I mean, band
Same
members
way-
love their dumb in jokes. I
Same-
can attest to that.
Same way Smells Like Teen Spirit isn't actually about like the zeitgeist of teenagers. It's just about a brand of deodorant that Kurt Cobain smelled like.
Yep. Serious music.
Music is dumb and we're all fired.
I mean, music is dumb. Like, as serious as you can take music, it is also completely ridiculous at the same time. Like, I love it with all my heart and soul, but I also realize what a joke it is. Like, I played the same thing twice. I wrote a song.
Well, and it's like when you're creating music, you don't put nearly as much thought into it as people do when they're picking it apart after the fact and critiquing.
Right.
I
know.
don't know about you guys. I do that for some of my songs.
Those obsessive nerds. I've only
Right.
done that for my country bro metal song.
Right. The best song we've ever co-written.
Right.
With 30 other people.
We and like 6 other people.
You want to explain that for the podcast listeners who might care about your country
Well,
bro metal song?
It isn't published yet, but we're working on a bro country / metalcore / rap / Americana / alt rock song.
You pretty much just described Five Finger Death Punch.
Really, the goal is
So-
for Lipstick to pivot towards that direction.
Right?
Well, hey, there's money to be made in there. It's just I don't know.
Be selling our souls for bro country.
Making music for the fucking roid heads down at Planet Fitness. I could never summon that up inside of myself. I don't get it.
You know, it's tough finding that balance between I want to create art versus, man, you know, I just don't care. Just get me out of this day job. Fine, bro country, whatever it takes. No,
No, and that goes back to that hired guns thing. It's like, I can totally understand the dream of making a living, uh, being a musician. Playing in the worst band on the planet, which very well could be Five Finger Death Punch, is better all day long than what the three of us do at our day jobs. There is
yep.
absolutely no question about that. But in order to do that, you have to make some compromises because it is something that you're setting out to do for a living. Anytime you do something for a living, you got to make some compromises, and in that arena, you're wearing your band's own football jersey and you're playing fucking guys who are roided out at Planet Fitness and are probably going to go out and rape some women later. And I don't know how you can create music to appeal to that demographic. I couldn't do it.
So speaking of women, I actually have a question for the panel. Do you, I was listening to a Pot of Thunder episode, and you were talking about how Nick and Andy weren't creating music to get laid, and that it was never a factor or part of the equation.
I don't get that whatsoever. That is completely alien to me. I couldn't believe.
So actually,
I get it when you hear their music; it's completely devoid of that. Maybe not completely, but the majority of it is. It's the whole concept of that not entering into your thinking whatsoever is absolutely from another planet for me.
What's
completely alien.
So two things with that. I'm going to get to my original question, but actually, that's kind of a non-factor for Steve and myself.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
I don't know what's wrong with you.
I mean, he's already got a wife who isn't that impressed with his music, regardless.
Hey, she likes it. She just doesn't like the joke punk band that we're in. She likes Lipstick quite a bit. Well, with me, it was a non-factor in the sense that the music I made, like, it wasn't one of the end games. Like, I'll make music to get chicks. It's more just it sort of happened and I was okay with it. But it wasn't ever a focus. And songwriting wise, I, back in the day thought that, really sexual lyrics for the most part were done really poorly. And so I didn't want to try to write something clever and then just have it come out as a joke. So I just avoided those lyrical subjects altogether and just focused on more romanticism and love songs, Phil Lynott type stuff, as opposed to "girl, get on my dick."
Well, hold on. You're conflating. You're confusing things a little though, Greg. Because like lyrics that are explicitly sexual and writing music to impress girls are not a 1-to-1 ratio.
But I wasn't writing it to impress girls. It was more just I was writing the songs I wanted to write, that spoke to the muse. And if it impressed girls, that was cool. The main thing I was concerned was, will they buy a CD and T-shirt? And if I get some additional benefits after the show, that wasn't what I thought when making the music, but it was a nice perk, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how you could put commerce ahead of coitus, really, to use two words to start to see. I think you have it in reverse order. If you basically appeal to the baser instincts of people, eventually they'll get their wallets out.
So to posit a third perspective, I think music is an end in and of itself. And while I would like to make money, and it would also be nice to impress girls with my music, I just want to create music regardless.
Shut up, nerd. Give me your lunch.
No,
money.
I get that. No, it's all interrelated. I mean, to me, the pinnacle of what we're talking about here is basically Bon Scott. Okay, everything about that guy was let's get laid, let's drink, let's get in a fight. It doesn't get any more rock and roll than that guy, and he never deviated from that formula. And it wasn't contrived or anything. That was him. That is the pinnacle of what we're talking about. Very few people get to the actual pinnacle. Obviously, you're going to mix in like your own art, expressing yourself. What is more an aphrodisiac to women than a man expressing himself genuinely? You're trying to get laid, you don't even realize it, Greg.
Maybe that's true. It's just the subconscious level.
Let me clarify something else too. I know you're married. It doesn't mean you're actually going to go out and get laid, but you're doing the things that a man needs to do to get laid. You should never lose that, because it's a part of what makes a man viable and a dynamic presence on the planet. Doesn't mean you go out and do it because you are married. I'm married, but
I'm not. Ladies, listen to my weird nerd rock.
Right. Greg and I will whip the women into a frenzy, and we'll send them over to Steve.
That's how we'll do it.
Happy about it.
Thanks, guys. That sounds like a plan.
You must never lose the things that men do to get laid, because that you will lose your vitality if you do that. So just wanted to clarify that point a little bit.
And that is a great point. And I'll say this before I get to the question I wanted to ask.
Oh yeah, we're like 3 tangents in.
We haven't gotten to it, but the thing I wanted to say quickly was, I was raised Catholic, like the Joneses, and then told that Catholics were evil by my stepdad, and then told not to be Catholic. But I harbored Catholic guilt into adulthood. Like, you can't enjoy sex, as I was engaging in ridiculous Motley Crue levels of debauchery. And now I'm at the point where, I'm married, everything's calm and stable. And that is actually weird, because I'm at the point psychologically where I'm like, you know what, that wasn't that bad. I didn't do anything wrong. So right when my psyche is totally cool with the debauchery is when I stop. I'm like, damn it. Right then. Now I don't have the guilt, but I'm not doing it anymore. But the question for the panel, was Black Sabbath trying to get laid with their creepy music about Satan?
Dude,
that's a good question.
Those guys were some of the most hedonistic. I mean, if you've read any of their biographies or what happened to them once they arrived in L.A. to record Volume 4, those guys were as hedonistic a band as has ever existed. So, to me, the answer is unequivocal, yes.
They were trying to get into what's-her-name from Coven's pants, specifically.
To me, it's an interesting route to get laid. Like, we're just going to be really creepy and make people uncomfortable, and that's going to make women want my penis. That's an interesting. That's
a thought process that is hard to parse.
Like, I don't doubt that they enjoy the debauchery, but it's weird, like, with the stuff they wrote and how that led to the debauchery. When Zeppelin's like, yeah, lemon song, juice down my leg, woman, like, yes, I can see the one-to-one correlation of, like, I want to get laid, I'm going to sing about it, versus Black Sabbath, I'm singing about Satan, but still, please, have sex with me.
Zeppelin had the dark direction, too, with Dazed and Confused and some of the stuff in the early days and stuff. They were just a little more forward with the presentation. But, another thing that women enjoy about men is that you're going out there with some swagger and some confidence, and you're demonstrating that you have talent. All of those things are very appealing to women. So you could be singing about these dark subjects, but you're doing it with confidence, and you're doing it with swagger, and you're showing that you have talent. It's a potent trifecta. So, and
confidence and swagger is definitely missing from a lot of music. There's a song I wrote called "I Like the Way I Rock" on the first Lipstick album. Buy it anyway. It was a song I wrote in high school because I realized a lot of my lyrics weren't displaying like confidence and swagger. I realized, I was growing up in the emo reflective generation where my music didn't sound like those bands because I thought those bands sucked. But generationally, like, people weren't singing about swagger. And so I had to consciously realize, like, oh, wait, I sound like a little bitch with my lyrics. So I need to, like, have the confidence and swagger and reflect that in my writing and bring that out. And it was a conscious decision, like, I need some swagger. You got to bring that back.
Girl, I'm sad.
No, it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah, somehow the R&B and hip hop and rap community just 100% commandeered all the swagger in music. It's definitely not missing from those genres, and people love it when they hear it from artists in those genres. Just for some reason.
I've been listening to that Pink song basically on repeat for the last 3 days.
Which one is that? I don't think I've heard it.
By Janelle Monáe. It's the one that's about vaginas.
Oh, I thought you meant the artist Pink.
No, the song is called Pink with a Y.
Ah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. See, there you go. And it's like
there's a lot of swagger in that.
Yeah, people are still attracted to it. They just don't get it from rock and roll music anymore, which is a shame. But yeah, we're way off on a tangent here. But,
well, that's our thoughts on N.I.B. Next song on the list is Behind the Walls.
How did N.I.B. touch off that?
I think the trick is everybody knows N.I.B. But like, what do we say about N.I.B. that hasn't already been said 1,000 times?
We talked about how the devil was awkward and he didn't have that, dick wagons, swagger to get laid.
Awkward swag devil.
Yeah.
But yes, Behind the Wall of Sleep is that song on the list.
The thing I found sort of notable about this one, I put this one as my second one above N.I.B. actually. This is a really unusual vocal chain, the way they have the double-tracked, hard-panned Ozzy Osbourne. I listened to this on headphones, which I think, is not the way the song was originally intended to be listened to. That was a surreal effect that I wonder how much of that was on purpose and how much of that was they just tracked Ozzy twice and he didn't even bother trying to match himself at all.
Yeah.
And then I docked some points because this song has little to nothing to do with the short story, which is one of Lovecraft's better ones.
It's a good short story. I think, when you're talking about that vocal effect, I just thought of this now as you said that, but there's that Beatles song, I'm Only Sleeping, which, has a weird vocal effect and has a dreamlike atmosphere. So it's possible the vocals might have been done that way to give you that dreamlike atmosphere. So, but this is another, it's another potent rock song, kicks ass, just cool tune. Not as classic as some of the other material on the album, but still just great rock song. So I like it. I don't have as much to say about it.
Yeah, this one, it's more classic than you think. It's been a staple of the live set for a long time.
Yeah.
It's again, I point to they're not as the changes in gears throughout the song aren't as severe. They're more subtle, which I appreciate, but they definitely the arrangement of this song is what really sets it apart for me. It's just there's a lot of interesting stuff going on within the context of it. So I had it at number 4, so top half of the list for me.
I like the guitar tone on this track a lot. I think out of all the songs, this is the one where I noticed the tone the most in a positive way. It was a very rich, full sound, so I definitely appreciated it on that level. The only reason this ranks slightly lower with me in comparison to what I consider the classic, the 3 classic tracks off this album, I think this is good, but it's not quite as legendary or epic, at least in my internal Black Sabbath canon, is that it's just not as catchy. Push come to shove, I'm really a pop rock guy. That's why I like Kiss so much. They're essentially a pop band with heavy guitars.
Sure.
So, the song is good, but it's not, slam you over your head, turn on the night catchy. It's
well, no.
So, but it's still a great song. It's just I prefer popular music in general. It's just so happens that a lot of the poppy music I enjoy has heavy guitars.
Right. Yep. Definitely not a pop song, this one.
No.
Not a lot of pop songs named after Lovecraft stories.
But
And that's a shame.
yeah,
Right.
Somebody should do something about that.
Steve's working on it.
I've written 2 songs named after Lovecraft stories. One of them's kind of poppy.
Call of Cthulhu, is that the poppy one?
Yeah, I mean,
That song is great.
The other one is Rats in the Walls, the one that's mostly in 7/4.
And that one's still good. You see, now that would have been a good Sabbath song. That song would fit in on this album, not the way you did it.
Oh yeah, of course not. Like if they did that though, yeah, the song that's in 7/4 and just retells the story of the short story of dark lyrics, including the fake Latin diversion in the middle. Yeah.
So for first-time listeners or for people who don't care about our bands, the context of this, the main band that he and I do together is a hard rock band, sort of styled after 70s and 80s glam rock. So somewhere in between Kiss and Motley Crue, sonically. And we get comparisons to, Thin Lizzy and other bands too. But his solo band is a glitch punk band, so kind of like Devo, but maybe slightly heavier.
Somewhere between Devo and Adam and his package.
Right. And so he has a song, Rats on the Walls, which, is a creepy, Sabbath-y style song in terms of the way he wrote it, but the way it's played does not sound anything like Black Sabbath.
I've still got the computer going beep boop 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 boop. As one does.
As one does. But, yeah.
So where are we at on the list here so far? I've kind of lost track.
We've got 2 left.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We've got 2 left, and these are my top 2 in the order I had them, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. Next up, coming in as the second best song on this classic album, The Wizard. This is a song with some swagger. This is just everything about it is awesome. Just the harmonicas sound cool, awesome riffs, great beat. Really fun, fascinating lyrics. Like, it really builds this character of the wizard as just this confident dude casting spells, not giving a fuck. Like, this wizard seems like a cool dude. And it's really great after the first track, because that first track, is so dark, creepy, and, sets this very melancholy atmosphere. But this sort of shows a different side of magic, where there's swagger and confidence and sort of an opposing light force to combat the dark, and just how it's more of a struggle between the opposing forces and then rather a completely one-sided battle. And that it really sets the atmosphere and tone for the album, brings you in, sucks you in further. It's just a badass, cool rock song. I dig it. There's a lot to love in the track.
I just love that the wizard apparently plays harmonica.
Yeah, the wizard doesn't care. He will play harmonica.
Zero fucks given
right.
by the wizard.
I mean,
he's like, look, I'm carrying around a bunch of spell components. I don't want to carry a heavy instrument.
He would look Andy Jones right in the eye and play tambourine on stage and say, "What are you going to do?" Nothing. Nothing about this. Oh.
He's like, hold up, this calls for an oboe solo, you guys.
Yeah, this wizard's a badass. He doesn't give a shit. Fucking cool dude. Want to party with this guy. Protect me from all those crazy, occult people who want me dead.
Yeah, I never really delved that deeply into the lyrics like you guys have. For me, it's all about the drumming. One of the most incredible drum performances of any band in history. Just amazing, and just drives the whole song, and everybody else just gets on board with that level of badassery, and it all just is rooted in the drum kit. That's, I had this at number 3, Warning, bumping it down to that position. Again, I explained why I like Warning so much, but the drumming is incredible. Although I will say that Bill Ward's finest drumming album is Volume 4. He's just amazing on that whole thing, just incredible. Every time I listen to it, and it's true of this song as well, I just can't help but key in on the drums, and it's just drives my enjoyment of it. So that's where it's all about for me.
I would agree. I think the drums are the best part of the song. It drives it, it keeps it moving forward, and just you get pumped listening to it. Like I'm getting pumped right now. I want to go to Planet Fitness and just
Just do some roids.
Yeah, put on some Five Finger Death Punch. And isn't it clever how their logo is like a set of brass knuckles? God, those guys are so cool. God, bunch of dickheads. Crazy how that shit has infused this episode. I don't know, but that's the beauty of podcasting is it's not a contrived conversation, at least the way we approach it. So
I think
we had this whole script we were supposed to follow, but then just we missed the cues and it fell apart. We've been improvising since about 10 minutes in.
well, the saddest thing about it is I know all this stuff about Five Finger Death Punch. In a perfect world, I would know nothing about them. They would have never entered my consciousness whatsoever. But they are so abhorrent that I can't help, try to understand where this entity came from and how it came to be. It's just horrible.
I think I mostly just know about them from people commenting on Pandora pages saying things like, these guys are almost as good as Godsmack!
Oh, Jesus, that's another one. Then Disturbed, just that whole genre of
I like the whole genre of metal bands who write songs about fighting the man and then immediately license them to the Navy.
right?
Oh, exactly. It's just so disingenuous. It's such bullshit,
I'll say this about Disturbed. There are a couple songs of theirs I like.
I agree. Like Prayer, I think, is the name of it. That's a great song.
Yeah.
I have no hesitation about saying it. The
Do they have songs that you like that weren't written by former members of Genesis?
Yes, they do. But also, one of the great things about a band like Disturbed, as we get off on another tangent, is like that music is so incredibly dated and awkward, and that's kind of why it's enjoyable in a way. Where I remember when they released some of those Dragon Ball Z movies in the early 2000s, and they had a bunch of nu metal in the soundtrack. I hated it then because I hated that kind of music. But now when I go back and watch those fight scenes, I'm laughing my ass off because it's just like, oh, of course there's Disturbed and Pantera and all this shit in the soundtrack, and just laughing hysterically as like their obvious macho metal attempts to make the fight scenes more intense. Like, it dates it so much, and I love it for that.
I was a teenager when nu metal was big, so I unironically loved it, and now I'm deeply embarrassed by so much of it. Like, guys, let's listen to some Limp Bizkit. Let's not.
So, then the odd thing is I find Limp Bizkit to be actually musically interesting.
Yeah, they've got some good songs.
Oh, yeah, what's his name? Their guitarist. He's way too good for them. Wes Borland is a great guitarist.
And Pantera I would not file with these guys because they had way more interesting stuff going on musically. I mean, Dimebag was a genius on the guitar, in my opinion. So I don't classify them with the Five Finger Death Punches and the Disturbs of the world. I think it's like it's like comparing Van Halen to all the cheesy 80s metal bands that followed them.
Right.
It's just imitated all the stuff that was on the surface. It just didn't delve any deeper than that, and just were a pale imitation. So
I feel like Pantera's problem was that they were too late to hang out with Metallica, which is who they really wanted to be. They wanted to be one of those big thrash bands, but they were too late to the scene, so they had to hang out with the nu metal kids.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't get the thrash thing with Pantera. I mean, I think there are hints of it, but they were just the pioneers of that, what you would call groove metal, which is where they slowed down the tempo. It's kind of like what Slayer did when they went from Rain and Blood to South of Heaven. It's like they slowed the tempos down and actually got a groove going.
Like a thrash band, but tired.
Well, yeah, but it's like thrash music. I don't really hear any groove in it, whereas because it's too fast. Whereas if you slow it down, you just that groove element of it comes through, and that's where I think Pantera really set themselves apart. So
as a lame pop guy, for me, every CD I listen to it always comes down to how good I think the songs are. With Pantera, there's only one album of theirs where I really like the songwriting, and then everything else I just don't care for. So Cowboys from Hell is a classic album which I love and I'll listen to often. And then I hate Vulgar Display of Power and just everything after. And I like the goofy power metal stuff before Cowboys, like on an ironic level, but it's like, no, I'm not actually sincerely enjoying this. But hey, they have one great album in them that I love, so I'm not going to say, oh, they suck. It's just like, I don't care for most of their stuff. But this one album, like, nailed it.
Yeah, like Cemetery Gates and stuff.
Great song.
I mean, that's a great.
The title track, very great stuff.
Yeah. So they were on the cusp of it, and then they, obviously you don't listen to Pantera for the songwriting necessarily,
which is why I don't listen to them.
Right, and I get that, but just the way they approached the music and just did it differently, and then you had just an otherworldly talent on the guitar. I mean, that just sets them way apart from something like fucking Godsmack.
Godsmack!
That is just...
Godsmack were the best at what they did, which was writing accessible pop metal songs to immediately be licensed for commercials.
Right, yeah, and they have a kick-ass drummer, is that guy Shannon Larkin or whatever his name is. I mean, he's legitimately talented, great guy, but this fucking front man of theirs engaging in these song wars with Nikki Sixx and whatever idiocy those guys were involved in a few years ago. It's like, fuck off with that. You want to talk about... their music is, like you said, is like writing for commercials. It's like he's actually consciously engaging in stuff that's going to get him covered on blabbermouth.com. It's like, are you fucking that pathetic? Are you going to write a song called Crying Like a Bitch to take shots at Nikki Sixx and actually put it on your album? You're a fucking loser doing that. Stupid.
We've only gotten mentioned on Blabbermouth once in the parentheses of one of our buddies in the Gene Simmons band as like one of the other bands he has played with. That's the only time we've been on Blabbermouth, like in parentheses, also played with Lipstick. Like, hey, there we go. That's our one thing.
Than we've got. So.
Well, let's go through the list again as we get to the number one song. Coming in as the least best song on the album, voted by this illustrious panel of experts, Evil Woman, and then Sleeping Village, then Warning, followed by Wicked World, then Nativity in Black, followed by Behind the Wall of Sleep, and then The Wizard, but a unanimous first place, just crushing the competition, no surprises here, the title track, Black Sabbath, by Black Sabbath, from Black Sabbath. Like, what can you say about this song that hasn't already been said? Apparently something, because we're about to talk about it. Podcasting, what up?
It's a masterpiece. I mean, and it's could be the greatest opening salvo in the history of rock music, or really any form of music. I mean, everything about it is perfect. Unlike anything that was going on at the time. This is another... I was alive, but not consuming rock music at that time, but this is the type of album you can imagine that people put on and we're just like, what the hell? From what planet is this coming from? It's like nobody was doing it. I mean, the closest comparison I would make to bands around that time would be like Blue Cheer, or maybe Steppenwolf, in terms of dabbling in these dark subjects and being a little on the heavy side. But this was just light years ahead of that. And I mean, Zeppelin approached it with like Dazed and Confused. That's a dark, weird song that they directly stole from the Yardbirds, but that's another discussion.
What, Zeppelin stealing stuff? No way.
Well, yeah, exactly. But this was just light years beyond any of that, and just this song is what a masterpiece. And just people talk about how you combine it with the cover image and stuff. It's just everything about it is just completely perfectly executed, just incredible.
Right, yeah, this is really Black Sabbath operating at their peak. The scary, weird atonal riff, the big change up at the 2/3 of the way through the song, and Ozzy just like wailing like this weird banshee screaming in agony. Yeah, this is exactly the sort of thing they were supposed to be making.
Exactly. It was basically a old school horror movie set to music, which is, the band is named after what, a Boris Karloff movie, something like that.
Something like that.
They nailed it. And I mean, again, you consider that these guys recorded this album in 2 days, and to come out with this particular take of this song, I mean, you can't imagine them doing anything on it any better.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So, question: does anyone else on the panel have any experience with weird occult things, or just me?
I listened to a lot of Adventures in Odyssey as a kid, and they talked about the occult a lot. Usually it was along the lines of, don't use Ouija boards or play Dungeons and Dragons, because those will give Satan a path
and see,
into your life.
you play Dungeons and Dragons, so you know the occult pretty well.
Right, I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Chris, how about you? Have you ever delved into any of that weird stuff?
No, like I said, I was more attracted to guys like Bon Scott, who simply wanted to burst out of their blue jeans and get laid. So the occult didn't really check those boxes for me.
Yeah, with me and the occult, it's more just I stumbled into a lot of it. I hate horror movies because I think they're just poorly written pieces of garbage that aren't entertaining. So I'm not a horror guy. But, you meet some people who do some weird pagan satanic rituals. You break into a haunted prison or two, and you just start to experience some of the weird, creepy stuff of that atmosphere. And I really enjoyed how this song encompasses a lot of the occult experience into a song. It really does,
yeah.
And
I mean, I don't understand any of it either, but it's just like
most of it's bullshit.
Suddenly you're transported into that world, and it's just incredible how they were able to achieve that. And it's a song that set the template for metal in terms of it being a form of music that was going to scare people. Your parents were going to forbid you from listening to it. There were going to be demonstrations in the streets against it, and it's all rooted in this song. And there's really no debate about that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, as far as an opening cut, just identifying what a band is about.
Incredible.
For the first song on the first album, that's a big thing. Like a lot of bands don't nail that first song on the first album. I worked really hard on We're Here to Rock You for Lipstick because I'm like, hey, this is the opening salvo of our catalog. I have to nail this. And because I was looking at stuff like this song and Strutter by Kiss, and things were just like, this is the introduction to the band. And this just defines the band so well on so many levels. And, just the usage of the Devil's Third and all that stuff. And, I was reading about this song and how it originally didn't sound quite as dark and creepy. And it was more, I guess, a standard kind of bluesy thing. But then just when they heard Ozzy wailing on the vocals, the arrangement just started to morph and change, where it just became creepier and creepier, and they started to play it creepier and creepier because of the way Ozzy was singing it.
Or not, really.
Or not, as Steve says. But I think this is, a band coming together and an organic sound developing. Like, this isn't pretentious or thought out or just like, oh, we have to do this. This was just something that naturally happened. And, and that, as someone who has been in bands, to have something naturally happen that sounds good in a band is a miracle. Because most of the time when bands try to make something natural, it doesn't sound as good, or they're just jamming in different directions. This is a band coming together, 4 guys, at a really good point in their lives musically, just creating magic. This is magic on an album. It's amazing. It's a classic. It's a perfect song.
Yep. There's really that definitely nails it, and it's impossible for it to have been contrived because nobody in the right mind would have thought this was going to be a recipe for success around that time. But look what happened. It touched off everything. Um, but yeah, it's a masterpiece, and just to have it right at the beginning, and the best part about it. That it occurred to me while I was listening to it just the past couple days. And it's funny you rattled off, Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath on Black Sabbath. Well, those two words do not appear in the lyrics. So how cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't need to. You just know what it is.
Right. They should have called it BS and just been done with it, like N.I.B. But no, there's no you can't really overstate the importance and influence of this song. It's perfect.
And even before I dabbled in occult things, yeah, like that's just a separate layer of extra appreciation, extra spice. Like, oh sweet, they nailed it. It's authentic. Taking that factor out of it, even as a kid who thought horror movies were dumb, I thought this was a potent, kick-ass song, and there's just quality. It's the way I like Edgar Allan Poe, even though I don't like horror, because the dude's just a great writer. And he can write in whatever genre he wants, and it's going to be good because he just makes good work. This, it doesn't matter if you're into horror or into metal or into rock. This is just great. It is undeniable greatness.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah, that is our panel. That is our ranking of the first Black Sabbath album. Anyone surprised with the ranking? The only shocker for me was N.I.B. not being in the top 3. I thought that was a pretty solid top 3, but otherwise, pretty okay with the ranking.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by how low N.I.B. was, but otherwise, no. Or maybe N.I.B. if it's about the beard.
Right.
Well, I think that's probably due to me having it 6th on my list.
It's all your fault.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just, again, as I gave the whole album another listen in preparation for this episode, that's how it shook out for me. And, having warning so high probably threw things off a bit too. But again, it's just the visceral reaction to hearing it the first time. I've always hold that song in very high regard.
Yeah, and once again, it's for really good albums, it's a lot harder to do the rankings where it's like, oh man, these are all great and all pretty much equal. Shoot, which one? And then you wash your hands clean of it, like, you know what, the other panelists are going to ruin this for me. I have to not worry about it.
Those jerks.
I have to not worry about how low Sure Know Something's going to rank on the Dynasty episode. I just have to know where it is in my heart.
Yep, exactly.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. Next week, we'll be ranking Pitbull. I don't know. We'll be ranking something, but we should rank Pit. We need to bring you on for a Pitbull episode. I think the Pot of Thunder fans need to hear you just explain the brilliance that is Pitbull at length in a podcast. I think they'll get it then.
Well, again, it's rooted in the discussion of getting laid that we had earlier. It all comes back to that. So.
Pitbull knows exactly what he needs to do in order to impress women with his music.
Pretty much.
I've got a beat you can dance to, and I'm wearing a nice suit, ladies. And then I hired more talented people than me to sing.
Exactly. Hey, that's the way. That's the way to do it, man.
Can't argue with that formula. He's doing pretty well for himself.
It certainly worked.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that is our show. I want to thank our excellent guest, Mr. Chris Lathrop. Chris, where can the internet find you?
You can go to potofthunder.com. That's our main website. And we're also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all the usual suspects. Just come and have a look. We're tomorrow, well, the day after we're recording this episode, or episode 257 is coming out. So we're getting close to the end of doing all the Kiss songs, which is what we set out to do from the outset, and getting ready for the possible next chapter. So give it a listen, give you a little flavor of what we do on our show from my participation on this podcast today. But if you like your music mixed in with some humor and snarky commentary, give us a listen.
It's a fantastic show. I'm making my way through all the episodes, and it's great. Love Pot of Thunder. Can't say enough nice things about that show. We're Lipstick. You can find us at lipstickgeneration.com. That's the easiest way. Just go to that site, and then the links to all the other social media is there. It'll just make it really easy. Download some music, check it out. Got more podcasts. We're doing a lot of stuff on Kiss, a lot of stuff on Smashing Pumpkins. So if you like either of those bands, be sure to check out those episodes. Thank all of you so much, and have a good one. Peace.